like talk about an aligned friendship, into spirituality, also an entrepreneur, also has a freaking podcast, like just so much alignment, right? And then somebody that I could go out dancing with. And she started telling me different places to check out in Puerto Vallarta. And I'm just so excited to go back because now I have this friend, but I would have never met her if it wasn't for me going out to dance by myself. Welcome to the Chingona Revolution podcast, where we will bring out your inner badass Latina, overcome self-doubt, help you gain clarity, and pave your own path, all while leading with courage. I am your host, Latina coach and speaker, Erica Cruz. Hello, friends. Welcome back to this week's episode of Chingona Revolution podcast. I just got back from almost a month in Mexico, and I was in a few different areas of Mexico, but I spent a lot of that time alone. And I tend to get a lot of questions around how is it that you're able to do things alone? And then the other question, which is how can you make friends as an adult? Obviously, when we're in school, it's a lot easier to meet new people. Whenever you like start a job and vibe with your colleagues, it's easy to meet people. But what do you do if you're traveling on your own or if you just want to learn how to make new friends? And these two things are actually very connected in my mind. The ability to do things alone is directly correlated with your ability to meet new people. So over this month, I started the trip off with some incredible friends in Puerto Vallarta at our house there. So if you've been following my journey, you know that my mom and I built a house there. It is her retirement house. And it was a whole headache while we were building the house. But now that it's done, it is pretty amazing because I can just kind of buy a flight, go out there, and we have a house, a car, all of that fun stuff. So I hosted some of my entrepreneur friends. And funny enough, I met them not because we went to school together, not because we worked together. I met them because of social media. So I'll talk more about how to meet friends in a second. But first, let me just kind of give you a little recap of my trip. So I was with Kat del Carmen, Karina F. Daves, Liz Fernandez, and Mariela de la Mora. All of us are coaches. Some of us are leadership coaches. Others are business coaches, identity coaches, relationship coaches. I mean, just a great group of women. And obviously that first week when I was there with all of them, hosting them, we had a ball. We had such a good time. Some of the best memories were just of us in the house. And I remember just sitting there thinking like, wow, I never thought I would have friendships like this that get me on such a deep level. They get me from an entrepreneurial perspective. They get me from like being a woman of color perspective. They understand the pressure of what it's like to have to make money, right? And run a business because we're not getting paychecks from somebody else. Like there's just a level of understanding that they have. They understand what it's like to create content. All of us have podcasts. They understand what podcasting is like. So there's just so much alignment there. And every single person has their strengths in the group. So when we get together, all we really do is talk about business and coach one another. So it was so fulfilling. And I remember sitting there thinking, okay, how in the world did I end up with these people around? And the reason I ended up with these people around me and with these types of friendships is simply because I followed my purpose. I really followed what it was that I wanted to do. I built the courage to start the business I wanted to start. I started to create the content. I started to show up. And I'm not telling you that you need to go and do this, but what I am saying is that it's important for you to follow what it is that's calling you. Had I waited for somebody else to like tell me to do these things or to do them with me, I would have never started. It required me to start alone, and all of us found each other along the path. And some of us found each other at the beginning of the path, like Kat del Carmen and I became really good friends while we were in the middle of building our businesses. Karina F. Daves actually ended up being one of my clients in the TikTok course. And then we both ended up in a mastermind together and then ended up speaking at a bunch of different conferences. And we got really close over the last couple of years. And Mariela and Liz and myself were all in a mastermind together. And that is when we connected and we just completely bonded. We were like the three Latinas in the mastermind, like the three women of color that were in the mastermind. And we gravitated to one another. And we ended up taking a trip back in like 2022. And that's when Liz ended up meeting her now fiance. And it's just beautiful to see where we've all evolved to. But these friendships would not have existed if it wasn't for all of us following what it is that we wanted to do, if it wasn't for us following our calling to become coaches. And I think it's so interesting, right? That like we get DMs a lot about, oh my gosh, how do you find friends like that? And it really is, you're going to find aligned friendships when you are living an aligned life. And in order for you to find friendships, it requires you to be able to do things alone. So after that week, I ended up going to Mexico City with Liz for a little bit. I ended up going to go see family over in Guadalajara. And then I went back to Mexico City and I was there alone because Liz was no longer there, but she let me stay in her apartment, which was super amazing. And then I went back to Puerto Vallarta and I just ended up spending most of the time alone. And I think people were really shocked whenever I would tell them that I was there alone. Obviously, if I met a stranger, safety first, right? I wasn't just like, hey, I'm traveling alone. Like, I definitely wouldn't lead with that, especially if like somebody randomly who I didn't know was asking me who I was there with. I was like, oh, I'm with my friends. Like, they're going to get here soon. So safety tip, if you're ever traveling alone, never tell people that you are traveling alone. But all of you who follow me, I'm usually not posting things in real time. So I was getting a lot of DMs about like, oh my gosh, you went alone. And it always shocks people, but I actually love doing things alone. So if you are finding that you've either outgrown friends or you're looking to make new friends, this is the perfect strategy to create new community. And that strategy is to do things alone. This doesn't mean you have to go travel to a foreign country on your own or anything like that. I mean, hey, if you feel comfortable doing so and you're going to be safe, by all means do it. I mean, I've done a lot of solo traveling. I've done a lot of solo traveling in Europe. Mostly when I was working with the tech industry, with a company in the tech industry, I was traveling a lot to conferences on my own. And whenever I had free time, I was on my own. So I'm so used to going to restaurants and eating alone. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been in Texas eating by myself or in New York eating by myself because of working in the tech industry. And for some people, that makes them really uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable at first because you feel like everybody's watching you. But trust me, people are kind of doing their own thing. So if you want to make friends, I highly recommend that you allow yourself to do the things that you want to do alone. And here's why. When you are alone, you are opening yourself up to meeting new people, especially if you're doing something that you absolutely love. So when my friends were there, we had a fabulous time. But did I meet anybody? Nope. Not at all. Definitely made no new friends. Why? Because I was with my friends. And it's like, yeah, you talk to people at the restaurants and whatnot as a group, you do talk to people, but it wasn't like we were out making new friends. Like we were enjoying each other's company. And that's wonderful and beautiful. But what I hear a lot from my clients who want to make friends is they don't want to go out and do things alone. And they stop themselves from doing the things that they want. They want the friends to be able to go do the things with, but that is, if you don't already have the friends, you're going to have to go do the things that you want to do alone. So let's say that you want to learn to dance, just like I wanted to learn to dance salsa and bachata. I had to go to classes on my own. And guess what? I ended up meeting a ton of people. And there's so much beauty in doing things alone because when I was in Mexico, I didn't have to go check on anybody else. Like, oh, are you hungry yet? Do you want to go do this? Like, I was just able to do whatever the heck I wanted any moment. I was able to work out in the morning or in the evening. I was waking up when I wanted. I was getting work done without worrying that somebody was waiting for me. I would go to different coffee shops. I would start walking to one restaurant and change my mind and go to another restaurant. And there's so much beauty in being able to do these things alone because you're really just on your own schedule. I will say this quick thing because I feel like I'm kind of talking. I'm not talking in circles, but there's no script for this podcast episode. What a surprise. there's no script, but I know the main points that I want to make because these things became very obvious to me as I was traveling. So here's the point that I wanted to make. if you feel really uncomfortable with your own company, get really curious about that. Get curious about why you don't like being alone, because typically that means we are avoiding something. I'm not trying to like diagnose you all or anything, but I used to hate spending time alone. And it wasn't until after calling off my engagement and going through almost like this spiritual awakening that I realized spending time alone is actually a wonderful thing, because I'm spending time with me. Like, I'm really getting to know who I am, because we are constantly evolving. And when I got started as a coach, my type of coach, the niche that I was in, was a self discovery coach. And one of the things that I used to say all the time, which I still stand by, is that the self discovery journey never ends, because every experience, every relationship, every challenge you go through shapes who you are. And we're constantly evolving. We are this beautiful evolution that doesn't stop growing. We don't get to this place where we're just done. So giving yourself time alone is actually beautiful, because it's a great time for you to get to know who you are, get to know who you're becoming, get to know what your new goals might be. And it's also a wonderful way of getting in touch with your intuition. And for me personally, I was going through a difficult time in my life where I needed to make a decision as to what I wanted to do. And giving myself that almost month to myself was exactly what I needed. It just allowed me to take the pressure off. It allowed me to connect more easily to my intuition. It allowed me to gain clarity around what I wanted to do with my business next. So, spending the time alone is reconnecting you deeper to yourself, and it's allowing you to align to your deeper purpose even more. But the other thing that being alone allows you to do, especially if you can build the courage to go to the dance class, to go to the concert. Oh my gosh, I've gone to so many concerts by myself, and it is wonderful, because you get to go all the way to the front if you want. You get to be wherever you want. People are over there watching the concert. They are not watching you. They don't know that you're there alone. They don't care that you're there alone. I've gone to so many concerts by myself, like at least 4, and I swear those are always some of the best concerts, especially because when I invite somebody to go with me and they're not really into the music, then I'm worried about if they're even enjoying themselves. While for me, it's like I just get to sing along and be in the element if that's what I'm into, right? If I'm the one who likes the band or the artist, I'm not worried about anybody else. I'm just enjoying my time and I'm in the present moment. And I really, really love that. And even at concerts, I've met people, right? And I know that they're into the same things I'm into, because we're literally doing something that I'm into. So if you can build the courage to go to a concert or go to a dance class, it is just a wonderful way to also meet people who are into what you're into as well. I remember I had a friend when I worked in the tech industry who was really into writing and reading. I'm into reading as well, but I'm more into reading like self-development and self-help stuff. She was like a writer, like a novel writer and character development and all that stuff. And some of her best friends, she met them at a book signing for an author she really liked. And then the other group she met in a virtual writing group. So if you want to create intentional community, it is required that you go and do the things that you're interested in, even if you do them alone. There's so much beauty in spending time with yourself. And there's also just so much beauty that when you go out and do things alone, you're so much more energetically open to making eye contact with somebody, to allowing yourself to make connections with other people. Dancing is a great hobby to pick up on your own if you want social connection, because especially like and I'm not saying like, oh, go to the club where there's drunk people. I mean, going to a dance class where there's an instructor and there's other people there taking the class as well, because typically the way dance classes work is the instructors will give you a routine that you are going to learn, and you practice with almost everybody in the class. You typically rotate. So it means you end up having this social interaction with others many, many times. So every time I went dancing, I made new connections. We followed each other on Instagram. But one particular night that I'm thinking of, I went out to an event. It was a Saturday night, and I showed up and I paid for my entrance. And then somebody came up behind me and she paid for her entrance. And then she said, "Tienen Wi-Fi. Do you have Wi-Fi?" But the way that she said Wi-Fi, I was like, she speaks English, because that's how I say Wi-Fi. And that's not how they say Wi-Fi here. So as soon as we got in, I like turned around and looked at her and I was like, "Do you speak English?" And she was like, "I do." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And I was like, "Where are you from?" She's like, "Well, I live in Puerto Vallarta." And I was like, wait, what? Like, we have a house there. She's like, yeah, but I'm actually from California. I'm from Northern California. And I was like, no way. So am I. So it was just so wild. I'm in Mexico City at a dance event. There was a dance class and then the event right after. And I meet this girl who is from California, from literally, I can be at her house in like 20 minutes from where I live in California. But she's from California, but she lives in Puerto Vallarta. And I spend so much time there. And one of the things that's been difficult for me in Puerto Vallarta is finding an aligned community, just because my mom lives in an area where there's a lot of retired folks. So you get these like wealthier Mexicans or Canadians or Americans or families that are like kind of like high middle class in her neighborhood. You don't really get young entrepreneurs in that neighborhood, like young entrepreneurs who don't have families. And so meeting her was just like all the stars aligned. And we ended up going to dinner after, like, I want to say a few days later. Wait, I'm jumping ahead. We had a great time dancing. We spoke a little bit then. And we ended up following each other on Instagram. And then we saw each other the next day at a dance class. And then we were like, we definitely need to go get dinner before I leave, because I was leaving before she was. And we had dinner and like talk about an aligned friendship into spirituality, also an entrepreneur, also has a freaking podcast, like just so much alignment, right? And then somebody that I could go out dancing with. And she started telling me different places to check out in Puerto Vallarta. And I'm just so excited to go back because now I have this friend, but I would have never met her if it wasn't for me going out to dance by myself. So, like, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but pretty much the message that I am saying is spending time alone is really good for you for a few reasons. Reason number one, you are going to deepen your connection with yourself and with your intuition. You are going to gain so much clarity. You're going to learn so much about yourself. Reason number two is that when you allow yourself to go do the things that interest you, even if you have to do them alone, it's actually great because you end up meeting so many people who are also into what you are into. So let's say you're the only one in your friend group who's really into cars and you want to go to a car show, but you're like, oh, but nobody can go with me, so I'm not going to go. That is a missed opportunity where you could have met somebody who obviously likes to do what you like to do. Let's say that you go to the car show and you meet somebody, a guy or a girl, right? And you're like, and you end up vibing with one another. I don't know. Next time you can decide to meet at the car show. Like, oh, there's going to be another car show going on this day. And if it wasn't for this girl that I met, let me actually pull up her podcast name so you can check it out too. It's all about human connection, which I love. Okay, the podcast name is Greater Connection Pod. So Kelsey and I just randomly met and then ended up having this amazing dinner. If you follow me on Instagram, I posted the stories on Instagram and we just had such a fulfilling conversation. And Kelsey's the one who told me about, because I ended up extending my trip in Mexico City so I could keep dancing. And on Wednesday, they have a dance event in the park and it ended up raining that Wednesday. And she was like, wait, there's another event that's going on. So she's the one who connected me with this other event. And it's just beautiful how when you allow yourself to do the things that you want to do and you allow yourself to do them alone, that not only will you make these amazing connections, even if it's just a conversation that maybe you wouldn't have had if you didn't go, or if it's like a lifelong friend that you've met, or maybe, I don't know, your freaking significant other, right? Let's say that you're really into reading and you want a partner who's like really into reading. So you go to the book signings of the different books you're into or the conferences of the stuff you're into. So like for me, I'm really into spirituality. I'm really into self-development. I'm really into law of attraction. And not all my friends are going to be down for that. And that's totally okay. That is so okay. And, if you do want to, like sometimes we stop ourselves from doing things because we're like, oh, nobody would want to go with me. Well, we actually don't know that. So why don't we first ask instead of making the assumption, but two, don't deprive yourself of doing the things that you want to do. Again, bringing it back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast, I have this amazing group of friends that I could go to for anything, right? If I'm having relationship issues, I could pick up the phone and I can call Karina. If I'm freaking out about a launch or something about my business, I can call Kat. If I need somebody to hold amazing space for me, I can literally just send a voice note inside of the group chat that I have with Mariela and with Liz. Liz is also a therapist. She like specializes in helping therapists become coaches. So if I need a freaking therapist to listen to me, she can listen to me. Mariela is just this, like, I swear, she's like a Swiss Army knife. She's a leadership coach, but also knows how to hold so much space. Like, I feel like I can go to any of these women for anything. And Mariela is just one of those people who allows me to, she validates me in such a beautiful way and holds so much space. And I want this for all of you as well. I want you to have your group of people, but this group of people didn't come because we were sitting at home like complaining about our existing friend group. This group of people came about because we were all out being our authentic selves. We were all out creating content. We were all out doing the thing that we wanted to do, doing the thing that we felt called to do, following our purpose, and then looking at each other as collaborators, not competitors. Because I mean, let's also be honest, right? There's many times when if somebody works with one person, they don't work with somebody else. But you know what? The beautiful thing is a lot of the women that are my friends, we've actually shared clients. Like clients start working with me and then they end up working with one of them, or clients have like been in their programs and then they join one of my programs. Usually people don't just invest once. Maybe they'll invest, one at a time. But typically, people who are into investing in themselves are going to invest in themselves more than once. So that, and we all learned that, right? I think at the beginning it was a little bit triggering, like, oh my gosh, are they my competition, right? Or even me meeting Kelsey, like, oh my gosh, she has a podcast too. But there's enough room for all of us. Just because you're listening to my podcast doesn't mean you don't go listen to other people's podcasts, right? Of course, like I listen to more than one podcast as well. So it's like, how can you also allow these friendships to come into your life? How can you allow these connections to come into your life and knowing that collaboration over competition, because there's enough room for all of us. And notice, like all my friends I mentioned, we're all coaches, but we're all different types of coaches. Another great way of connecting with people, which is actually how I ended up deepening my connection with most of these women, and actually how I connected with Mariela and with Liz, is that we were all in a mastermind together. And I mean, I've seen the incredible connections that happen inside of Courage Driven Latina. I mean, like it really does create lifelong friends. And I'm seeing it happen right now in Magnetic Mastermind as well. And last week on the episode, I talked to you all about the doors opening at the end of October for Magnetic Mastermind. And those dates have actually shifted. And they have shifted because I am running a half marathon and I didn't want the launch to be in the middle of the half marathon. I'm a little nervous about this, but honestly, I trust myself and I believe that I could do hard things. And it's only 13.1 miles. So, I mean, even if I have to like literally jog and walk, I can get that done. Like, I believe that I can get it done. So I should probably start training though, so that I could get it done in a shorter period of time. But anywho, last week I talked about the doors for the mastermind opening at the end of October, and we've shifted those dates just a bit. So I wanted to give you the updated dates. So I am going to be hosting a webinar, How to Be Magnetic, and that is happening on October 21st. That is a Monday. So we're going to be opening doors on Monday, October 21st. So be sure that you mark your calendar. If you're on the email list, you're going to get an email about it. More details to come in next week's episode. So that is when the doors for Magnetic Mastermind will open. Feel free to join the waitlist by going to the link down below in the show notes. And you can also check out whenever you go to join the waitlist, you will see the sales page with all of the info on there as well. And on next week, I will give you all a little bit more details about what you can expect on the webinar, who the program's for, and all of that fun stuff. Okay, friends, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Make sure to visit theericacruz.com. That's Erica with a K, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can help this podcast grow by supporting me with an Apple Podcast rate and review. If you took anything away from this episode, I invite you to take a screenshot and share it on social media so that your favorite badass Latinas can also check it out. Be sure to tag me at the Erica Cruz. That's Erica with a K because you know I want to see it. If you're ready to join the revolution and be a part of the Courage Driven Latina community, visit couragedrivenlatina.com to get more information and join the waitlist. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.